All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Now, it has been a very fun and exciting first weekend of college football in the 2021 season. Of course, there is still more action tonight and tomorrow. Notre Dame is traveling to Tallahassee, or they obviously are in Tallahassee tonight to take on the Florida State Seminoles, and then we'll have Louisville and Ole Miss getting it on tomorrow night. But so far, what has stood out from the first full weekend, or the first full Saturday, rather, in this college football season? Going back to Thursday, Ohio State is proving that they are still light years ahead of everybody else in the Big Ten. You look at it, the Buckeyes didn't have their best game on Thursday versus Minnesota. Minnesota is also a good team. And it's a situation where, you know what, the Buckeyes, they were able to get their sea legs eventually and beat a good team. And I know that Ohio State had to replace a lot of players from last year's team that made the national championship game, but nonetheless, they're going to get better as the season progresses. Most importantly, quarterback CJ Stroud, because he's going to get the reps now. And you could see how this team came to life when they had to in the second half versus Minnesota. And they went into a very hostile environment and won that game. Now, you look at Friday. Central Florida is going to be very exciting under head coach Gus Malzahn. We saw them erase a big deficit at home to Boise State. They came back and won that contest. And make no mistake about it, I've always thought that Gus Malzahn is a very good coach. In my opinion, I think he got a raw deal at Auburn. It's a situation where, you know what, I think what hurt Malzahn at Auburn was the success of Alabama, and he held his own versus Nick Saban in Alabama. He did have one SEC championship, did get Auburn to the SEC title game on two separate occasions, but it is so difficult to come out of that SEC West consistently. But I think right here in UCF, I think there's going to be some magic made with Malzahn. And once this season is done, if not next season, if he wanted to come back into the SEC and coach another team, I think that door would be open for him. You look at Alabama, they still are the real deal. Had a lot of talent to replace from last year's team. But you know what? The machinery in Tuscaloosa continues to roll along. Bryce Young threw 4 touchdowns in his debut, and you just basically saw Alabama beat the brakes off of Miami. And barring something unforeseen, Alabama will be back in the college football playoff this January. Now, the second-ranked Oklahoma Sooners, they have to play better, but it's easier to fix things when you win as opposed to when you lose. Now, remember, this game with Tulane was supposed to be down in Louisiana, and that was not the case due to Hurricane Ida. This game was shifted to Norman on Oklahoma's campus, and Tulane gave Oklahoma all that they can handle. But you know what? The bottom line is the Sooners found a way to win that game, and I think that they are going to get better as the weeks progress. The Georgia Bulldogs, they're the real deal. And this team has the potential to run the table in the regular season. We saw that Georgia defense just put the clamps on Clemson's offense last night. And credit to this team led by head coach Kirby Smart. They went into Charlotte, which is basically Clemson's backyard. It's not that far away from their campus. Of course, the ACC championship game is played in Charlotte every single year. And the Dogs went up there and took care of business. And honestly, you could have a situation where both Georgia and Alabama reach the SEC title game with unblemished records. And if Georgia were able, or they were did stumble in that contest, it'd be a situation where I don't think that a loss to Alabama would prevent them from still getting to the college football playoff if the Dogs handle their business in the regular season. But right now, I think Georgia is the best team in the SEC East. Now, you look at Clemson. And for me, it's one of those where, barring a trip to the college football playoff, Clemson faced their toughest team, most importantly, their toughest defense last night. We saw this Clemson offense. They really could not get it going. Their D did limit Georgia, you know what I'm saying? But it's still a situation where their offense has to play better. DJU will get better, and the Tigers should rebound from this, because you look at the ACC as a whole. It hasn't been good over the years. and it's really weak this season. So, it's a situation where, Clemson could get their confidence back, get their swagger back. And if they run the table, they could be in the mix for a college football playoff run. But overall for the ACC, it was a bad weekend. We saw Duke go on the road and lose to Charlotte. The 10th ranked North Carolina Tar Heels went to Blacksburg on Friday night and lost to Virginia Tech, a team that they should have beat. I talked about Miami getting throttled by Alabama. Clemson's offense was shut down by Georgia. And if you want to throw it in there and make it worse, Georgia Tech lost at home to Northern Illinois out of the MAC. These non-conference slates of games, this is where the conference gets respect. And you look at it, it's all about that strength of schedule. And, nobody really stepped out showed out rather for the ACC this weekend. So this could hurt them come the end of the season when it comes time for the college football playoff. We also saw Penn State, and I talked about that last night on my podcast. Where, they really stepped up and they showed that they could be a player in the Big Ten. I mean, going to Camp Randall and beating Wisconsin is never easy, especially at the beginning of the season. You look at this Penn State team, they're well coached by head coach James Franklin. This D has been playing a lot better. This offense, they have the opportunity to be explosive this season. Penn State just has to go out there and take care of their business. I think the one thing that could prevent Penn State from winning the Big Ten, which is the same thing that has prevented a lot of teams recently from winning the Big Ten, is that team down in Columbus, the Ohio State Buckeyes. And of course, Penn State and Ohio State will meet this October in Columbus. You look at UCLA, and things are going to be a lot different for this Bruins team this year. They upset LSU last night. I think playing a game last week really helped the Bruins get their sea legs. Their running game got going, and that was able to carry over to last night's big win. You look at it, UCLA won the battle in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Their running game, led by Zach Charbonnet, was able to get going. And then their defense was able to create enough pressure to put on LSU quarterback Max Johnson. I think the Bayou Bengals can bounce back from this. Obviously, it's still tough in the SEC West when you think about having to face Auburn, Alabama, and Texas A&M. But nonetheless, I think LSU can bounce back. They have the athletes there. Their defense has to play better. A lot of bad tackling last night, lot of missed assignments. That's not going to get it done. And then on the flip side with quarterback Max Johnson, he has to play better as well, and I think he will. Nobody's going to run away with the Big Ten West. I mean, we saw Iowa dominate Indiana at home yesterday. Minnesota lost. Wisconsin lost. And then, Illinois lost to Texas San Antonio a week after they just beat Nebraska. So it's one of those where I think right now Iowa looks like the best team in the Big Ten West. Granted, it's only 1 week. But nonetheless, nobody's really going to run away with that division in the Big Ten. Steve Sarkisian, he should have some instant success at Texas. I mean, you cannot overstate the fact that the Longhorns beat a good Louisiana team yesterday. And it's a situation where, Texas ran the football and they established the line of scrimmage. And if you go back to Sarkisian's time, both at USC and Washington, respectively, when he was the head coaches at those programs, he always established the running game. So, you have a quality back in Kajon Robinson, and I think he's going to get plenty of carries this season in this Sarkisian offense. And Texas is still going to be one of the bigger players in the Big 12 conference. Some bad losses yesterday for the Pac-12, just like it was for the ACC. We saw Washington, who was ranked 20th, lose at home to Montana. Cal lost at home to Nevada. Arizona lost to BYU out in Vegas. Stanford lost to Kansas State in Arlington, and then Washington State lost to Utah State. We keep talking about the Pac-12 needing to get respect. This is how you get respect. You go out there and win these non-conference games. I know that UCLA got that big win versus LSU, which helped the conference, but nonetheless, these second and third tier programs right now, they've got to take care of business, especially when you're playing against, the lower conferences at the FBS level, and in some cases, an FCS school. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Pac-12 rebounds for this season. For Michigan, they're holding their breath after the injury to Ronnie Bell. He is one of their most explosive playmakers on offense. The injury did not look good. Head coach Jim Harbaugh is worried. And if you think about a team that has had offensive issues over the years, the last thing that you need is to have your best playmaker lost potentially for the season. Now, Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia are clearly at the head of the class in regards to making the college football playoff. I keep talking about Alabama. They don't rebuild; they simply reload. As you know, the talent train just continues to come into Tuscaloosa. Ohio State is only going to get better as the season progresses, which is scary for the Big Ten. And nonetheless, I think once they survive that test this past Thursday night, I think the sky is the limit for the Buckeyes. Georgia, I think Georgia should be able to build some momentum for themselves. The only problem with Georgia, and it doesn't matter if it's Kirby Smart or it's Mark Richt, who is the head coach of this team, it's a situation where Georgia always seems to have that one hiccup every single year. The Dogs cannot afford to have that hiccup. They have to build off of this, and they have to try to run the slate in the SEC East. Their contest with Florida is going to be tough. Missouri always plays them tough. You cannot overlook the defense of Kentucky. But nonetheless, Georgia's got to go out there and take care of business and try to be not only win the SEC East, but also get to the SEC championship game with an unblemished record. It's going to be interesting to see if Clemson can rebound from yesterday's loss in order to make the college football playoff. The opportunities are going to be there for Clemson. Like I said, this is a weaker ACC. Clemson, to me, is not as talented as they've been in years past either. So it's one of those where, Clemson really doesn't have an opportunity to slip up, because I think at this point, if Clemson loses one more game this season, albeit a conference game, I think they're out of the mix for the college football playoff, because it's one of those years where it would not surprise me to see two SEC teams get in. And also, the Notre Dame factor. If the Irish go undefeated, they're obviously going to take a slot in the field of four away from one of these Power 5 conferences. Will the Pac-12 be able to have a seat at the table for the college football playoff this year? USC has a chance. I know that they won by 23 yesterday at home versus San Jose State, but they've got to play better. And just like it was for Oklahoma, it's easier to fix a problem with a win than it is after a loss. The men of Troy are talented. It's going to be interesting to see if they can take care of their business. UCLA will be better, but I don't think they're good enough to make the college football playoff. And you look at Oregon. Oregon did not play well at home yesterday versus Fresno State. They had some injuries, and Oregon has their hands full next Saturday when they travel to Columbus to take on Ohio State. And it's an early contest at that. So it's one of those, that's a big opportunity for Oregon and the Pac-12 to get some respectability, but it's easier said than done to go to Columbus and get a victory. And, speaking of that, that's one of the headline matchups for next week, Oregon taking on Ohio State. And like I said, I think it was big for Ohio State to get that confidence this past Thursday on the road versus Minnesota as they look to build off of that. And another contest that I'm looking at for next Saturday is Iowa versus Iowa State. I'll talk more about these with my key games during the week for next week in college football. But nonetheless, that battle within that state of Iowa, of course, Iowa coming out of the Big Ten, Iowa State in the Big 12, and it's bragging rights. But if you're Iowa State, you're ranked in the top 10 to begin this season, and it's all about getting that respectability. You've got to find a way to show that you're the real deal. It's a situation where, you're going to have your opportunities in the Big 12 when you take on the likes of Oklahoma and Texas. But nonetheless, like I said, it's all about stepping out of conference for some of these programs right now in the early stages of this season to really flex their muscles. So that's a very a big game for both Iowa and Iowa State. But we did see already in the early stages of this season who are the players and who are the real deal teams for the upcoming college football playoff. Like I said, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State are simply at the head of the class. It's all about who's going to be able to match what these three programs do on the field, because at least two of them are definitely going to make the field of four for the college football playoff. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.